Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Well, it is unconstitutional. And first, let me say something about your introduction. There's a difference between wanting to wear a mask and passing a law mandating that people wear masks, and that's what we're concerned with, the actual punishment the government wants to assign to people who don't wear masks. But we do believe it's unconstitutional, mostly because it violates the Florida Constitution. We have a very robust privacy clause here in the state of Florida in our state constitution, and it's supposed to protect all sorts of private information and liberty when it comes to a person. And we think it really violates this clause because this is something government's never done before. We've never had government tell you what you have to do with your own face. This is truly a novel move for government, and we think that it violates the bodily and facial autonomy sort of implied parts of the Florida Privacy Clause. In addition to that, we think it violates the Due Process Clause because it's an arbitrary and irrational law.
Okay, well, seatbelts, are they unconstitutional?
No, and that's a great analogy because seatbelts, of course, are something that are assigned for people to wear in very highly regulated areas of public domain, namely highways. When you go to a highway, you're driving very fast, you're operating a piece of technology, and so the state has an interest in governing what happens in those very specific arenas. But what you find with these mask mandates is that they literally are everywhere you go, all day, everywhere. If you take Key West, for example, Key West passed theirs 2 days ago. People are assigned, people are governed by an ordinance that says you have to wear a mask 12 to 14 hours a day everywhere you go outside your own home. If you step outside your car in a grocery...
Okay, but you filed a lawsuit in a case where it's just masks inside of businesses. Okay, and you're in a state where of 20 metro areas that are the hardest hit in the country, almost half of them are in your state. And how cars work, right, is that people go from place to place. You're very aware of that.
Well, I can't fact check you on the metro part, but I do know outside of South Florida, most of my state is doing just fine. I live in the suburbs of Orlando.
I'd like to put a map up, sir. I hope you can see it. Sure. This is a map of your state so that you can see. All right, you can't see it. Okay, so all along throughout Florida's entirety, I mean, all throughout Florida, these are the top metro areas in the country, and you guys have about half of them. So that just flies in the face of what you're saying.
Well, Brianna, I think what you're doing is what a lot of folks in the media have done, which is harped exclusively on one metric, namely the cases. Cases. The media is almost exclusively focused on this one number versus the two most important numbers, obviously, hospitalizations and fatalities, where in most parts of the states, flatlined or gone down, especially in mine. And so if we focus on the two more relevant metrics, Florida's doing just fine.
Okay, we focus on case positivity, and we just did a report on the metrics that you cited. Perhaps you didn't hear it. But you've had actually in Leon County a circuit judge who said, and look, we checked, Representative, we checked with constitutional experts who said, and this is what the court judge said, and this is what the circuit judge said, and constitutional experts agree with this. The ordinance, because you lost in Leon County, the ordinance has a, quote, valid basis to protect public health because, I mean, you talk about this being an extraordinary circumstance, but we are in an extraordinary circumstance. We're in a pandemic, and Florida's not doing just fine.
No, they are. But on the judge issue, there's about 800 circuit court judges in the state of Florida.
You think Florida is doing fine right now?
Absolutely. I think the governor's response has been on point, and I think that the metrics that matter the most, we're doing very well. And if you're counting cases, you're going to scare people. But what they don't realize is cases are
deaths.
Far less.
4,521. Total cases, 301,000.
Last week in Florida,
hospitalizations increasing, 19,334. 54 hospital ICUs have reached capacity in Florida. Another 40 hospitals show that ICUs are at 10% or less availability.
Well, let me remind you.
You say you're doing fine?
We're the nation's third largest state. So out of the 70,000 new cases we had last week, we had about 100 more people go to the hospital. That is a extremely small number when you're looking at the fact that we have 21.5 million people. Certainly not the sort of numbers that would drive people to shut down the economy.
Sir, you're the epicenter of a global pandemic, and you can't even admit that?
That's actually a false assessment entirely. I don't even know what you mean by epicenter. The whole world's dealing with this issue right now. There's going to be a lot of cases in places of high population. Florida has 21.5 million people. Cases are going up. Everybody knew they were going to go up. When you open an economy, cases go up. Does that mean higher risk? Absolutely not.
Well, so let me ask you about that. You want to reopen the economy, right?
Correct. Should be 100% open.
So then why not have masks? Because you have a lot of people who are following the science on this. They look at all of these studies that show that mask wearing saves lives, and they're more likely to participate in the economy. You have Walmart, and today today Walmart, Sam's Club in Alabama, the Republican governor in Alabama, putting in place mask mandates. They disagree with you. They think that this is constitutional, and they think it's good business. What do you say to that?
Well, the governor of Alabama has done a horrible job, and I think the voters are going to throw her out of office. But more importantly, when you look at the mandate versus a voluntary mask wearing, a suggestion where government actually incentivizes and says, hey, listen, we'd like you to wear masks. Here are free masks, et cetera. I'm okay with that. If government wants to incentivize and recommend masks, as they've done in many places, that's going to get a lot of compliance, period. But they don't. That's a that's a very different role government's playing versus actually penalizing people with 60 days in jail. It's out of control. We don't need government putting people in jail in the middle of a big economic recession. It's terrible.
Okay, well, to be clear, these are monetary fines that we're talking about. But do you wear a mask? In the case of
let me be specific about that. In the case of DeLand, it is a monetary fine. Some of the fines are quite high. St. Augustine, another one of my cases, $500 per occurrence. But a lot of the largest urban areas, including Orange County, Orlando, my backyard, it's actually a second-degree misdemeanor. That's out of control. But to answer your question on the masks, if I went to a hospital like the president did, or I went to a place that would be considered medically sensitive,
do you wear one at the grocery store?
Absolutely not. I maintain social distance, though.
Okay, but you know that a new study, a good study out of Japan shows that indoor transmission is almost 20 times higher than it is outdoors. So when you go into a grocery store and you're not wearing a mask, you're comfortable putting workers who work there and other patrons at risk by not wearing a mask?
The studies that I've seen, the studies that have been most popular over the last 100 days of this crisis have said mask or social distancing. So if you're maintaining basic social distancing like I do, there's no reason to have an additional mask on top of that.
Everyone should wear a cloth cover, according to the CDC, in public settings and when around people who don't live in your household, especially when other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. It doesn't say just when they are not. This is the CDC. This is government guidance based on science. But then I'm just curious, why wouldn't you wear a mask in a grocery store? What is it about the mask that you don't like?
Well, to be actually quite honest, I hardly ever go to the grocery store. I like to eat out, and I do that a lot more often, so I'm not in a position to be asked to wear a mask.
Okay, well, you've talked about being in the grocery store. So you said you don't wear a mask in a grocery store. Why would you not wear a mask in a grocery store? What is it that is a problem with the mask for you?
To repeat my point, if you're basically keeping a social distance from people, you're not getting too close, you're fine. You don't need to wear a mask on top of that.
That's not true. Why is it? Do you find it uncomfortable? You've said it's annoying, right? Publicly, you've said it's annoying and it's hard to breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, obviously, a lot of my clients are people with asthmatic conditions, and it's extremely difficult. Listen, this is Florida. It's about 100 degrees outside.
But Representative, you know there's exceptions for people who have conditions that make it hard for them to breathe if they choose to not wear a mask.
And if you read the legal complaint of the lawsuit, what you'll find is that those exceptions are written in such a vague way that essentially most businesses and government itself are in a position to immediately want to deny it. So when you walk into a store and you say, listen, I have an illness or asthma, what's happening is you're getting actually bullied and harassed by businesses and government officials to wear a mask. They actually aren't trained. Most code enforcement, law enforcement are not trained on spotting your illness or subjective sensory disability, and so they're pushing you to wear masks. So really, these masks are actually creating even more havoc than violating the Constitution, but actually causing direct harm in people's lives by incentivizing bullying and harassment. It's terrible.
Do you know anyone who's died from COVID?
I'm aware of people who have. No one very close or on a first-name basis with me have died.
Who are you aware of who has died?
Because I'm a state representative, I hear about the names of the people in my community who died, and sometimes people do know them.
And it's proven that masks save lives. Wouldn't you want to see their lives saved?
I think the importance of masks, there is some importance to masks. I think that the media is grossly exaggerated their effectiveness in certain circumstances to the point where people literally think if they have a mask, they're not going to get COVID, when it's just a drop in the bucket in terms of precautions you can take.
The media is repeating what public health experts are saying. I mean, just to be clear, you are not a doctor and you're not a public health expert, right?
Well, don't forget that just 2 months ago, these public health experts. Well, let me say this. 2 months ago, these exact same public experts. You're
not. I'll just answer it for you, but go on.
Citing with authority said, do not wear masks. What do you say about that?
What do I say? I say that at the time they said they were protecting healthcare workers, and I say there's been a lot of discussion about that initial recommendation, as there should be, Representative. But that's not mutually exclusive with what you are saying here.
Yeah, no, hey, listen, the CDC is going to recommend a whole lot of things. People should take those things with great interest, but they should not make those things something that if you don't listen to, you're going to be punished in the eyes of the government. You're actually going to be sent to jail, arrested, hit with civil fines. That's really what the lawsuits revolve around, the role of government.
It is Thursday, the 16th of July of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh, yeah, be careful on Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays because the hot smoked Hungarian paprika can be used. Also on this special, do take care. Too much will overwhelm. Yeah, so just a mere scant dash, a mere pinch, even less than a pinch. Or as they would say in all the cookbooks, to taste. Well, if you do it to taste, that might not be an exact measurement. Just a mere pinch, okay? Scant dash. Alrighty. Well, looks like we have a new campaign manager for the Trump campaign. Poor Brad Pascal. I like to say Parscali. I think it really is Parscali. He doesn't know how to pronounce his own name. Really? Come on, Brad. Anyway, he's been demoted back to what he was before, a digital advisor. You mean a guy who points around with his first digit? I waited all night to say that. All night. Yeah, back to being digital advisor when he was working hand in fist with Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, and maybe Vlad himself. Or a proxy. Anyway, right after Brad was told that, Bill Stepien, the Bridgegate guy, is going to be taking over, he's been hanging around and you haven't, Brad. You've been driving that Ferrari. Anyway, you can be our digital advisor doing what you've done, and we're going to let this guy run the campaign. The next thing we know, Twitter gets hacked. Is that a coincidence? Somebody got paid off in Twitter, apparently, to let whoever wanted to hack accounts hack them. Okay, caused a lot of consternation because people were wondering, this came in the back end. This is like an inside job. Well, it was an inside job, but they were afraid that somehow Twitter's back end was able to get hacked. And I know that sounds really bad to those of you who don't know about our modern society and are assigning weird meanings from long ago. Stop it. Anyway, that was the great fear, but it turns out they had an inside job because somebody inside got paid off in Twitter to give the guys the tools. And apparently they're going after Bitcoin. I think they were doing a test run, actually. Now, I have heard that it was only Democrats or whatnot that had their accounts hacked and shut down, and that Trump did not suffer that. I actually thought he did. And that's why he went to Facebook to announce, the Bridgegate guy's going to be my campaign manager, because he got away with it. He got away with it. Yeah, they had to serve a little bit of time, and, but all of a sudden they got away with it. So, maybe somebody got paid off there, an insider in the court system. You never know. Sometimes people think the courts are being hacked from the back end. Oh, no. They have an insider. Lots of them. Lots. So, I don't know what to expect in terms of any change in tone in this campaign, because the tone is set at the top. Yeah, the gangster capitalist running a mafia state. Everything he's wanted. He's fantasized about this since he got fined for that HUD housing discrimination on racial grounds back in the late 70s. He's already said, when he hits back, he hits back really hard. So what way to hit back at the U.S. government than to sell it out to Vladimir Putin and his gangster state? Okay. He said, Trump warned us. He's always told us how much he hates America and most of all, Americans. If there's one thing that Trump hates the most, it's the people that populate this country. We are the scum of the earth to him. And he's only let us know about that repeatedly forever. So it's all corroborated in Mary's book. I would suggest you go read it. It's everything we already know or suspected. All of it. Every single last bit. Yeah, poor Fred Trump Jr., hounded to death because he had empathy. How dare you, you weakling. Jeez. Yeah, well, I guess that dynamic is in lots of families. Because there's lots of families that apparently teach, you got to be tough. Stop feeling sorry for that other person. You're feeling sorry for yourself. Well, they never say stop feeling sorry for yourself. Unless you feel sorry for other people. Then they'll hound you on that. So, Fred Trump suffered the debilitating effects of a heart attack while he was a pilot. And while he lay dying in bed, Donald, instead of being with the family of his brother on a death watch, went and watched a movie. Mary wants to know, what movie did Trump see that was more important than being with his dying brother? I don't know. It could have been Patton, I think. He loves that movie. He probably didn't even have to go see it. I mean, at a theater. He probably had it, projected somewhere in one of his monstrosity properties. When I say monstrosity, I mean the decoration. The interior decorating style. Yeah, that's a tone that's set at the top. Ugh, everything's gilded. Even the lilies. The lilies are gilded. That's the kind of guy he is. And as Mary said, he's a psychopath, a sociopath. Too much of nothing, too much of everything, and not enough. It's too much and not enough. Okay, so her dad was hounded to death. Those kids, she and the rest of her siblings, were written out of the will. Her mom too. Written out of the will. Because, they're losers. They had feelings for people. Got to get rid of those types. Mary Trump did confess that money is the most important thing in that family, and yes, she's part of that dynamic, admittedly. But it is a sad commentary when the only value is the cold, hard cash that you can present and show off to everybody. Because you can't put value to helping another person in a heartfelt way. That is priceless. But you are not able to convince a transactional materialist that something like empathy has a value in cold, hard cash. They cannot put value to that. And if you can't put value to something that gives you cold, hard cash, it is not worth doing. I cannot tell you how many times I've been told by other parents that they don't let their kids do something unless there's some possibility of them in the future making money at it. Oh, you want to play the saxophone? Well, if you think you can make money at it, we'll give you the lessons. Oh, you want to play soccer? Well, if you want the MLS, no, you want to play for the Bundesliga. Because they pay pretty good, actually. The Italians pay really well, but, I'm a little concerned about some of the Italian soccer teams' funding. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. Anyway, go play for the Bundesliga. And if there's not any possibility, you're not going to do it. What value is there in taking philosophy and history? What kind of money can you make at that? I tried discussing with those that, if you have a, liberal education, a capital L, grounding in the classics, that humanities, let's just put the generalization of the department, the humanities. That if you've taken the humanities, you've now become adaptable and pretty much can make money anywhere, doing anything. But they don't believe it. Of course, they think their great success is being able to pay high rent to sell a bunch of shitty furniture, and that's the pinnacle of success, in which they can then denigrate every other person's behaviors and actions as being commie and socialist. They want to help people. What kind of money is that? Well, I guess you could argue you could, go and make one of those no big contracts or contacts with the White House for refrigerated morgue trucks. They're going to need lots of those. You could be a supplier of those. No bid, too. It's all set up for the gangster capitalists running the mafia state. Indeed. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe? Since we're just burning up time, I had to put that whole exchange at the top with that Florida state representative who said, oh yeah, no one's ever mandated anything about what to do with people's faces. Get out of here. We have facial recognition stuff, and you can't put anything that's going to upset the facial recognition. And maybe that's why they don't want masks. Because I don't understand a death cult who thinks that they can actually get away with promoting death to people who are not in the cult. Like we're going to accept that? Please. Oh, it's unconstitutional. And I love the argument that he comes back with about seatbelts. Well, you have to, you're on highways. Well, you know what? When you're out in public in a municipality, there's implied consent there too. Okay? So wear a mask. Wash your hands. I love this idea that's like, oh, well, the mask doesn't prevent you from getting sick. They're still perpetrating this lie. It's not to prevent you from getting sick. It's to prevent others from getting sick. That's why you wear the mask. So he goes into a store saying, well, as long as I stay socially distant, I'm not going to get it. Yeah, we're not worried about you getting it, you fool. We're worried about you giving it to somebody else. That's what we're talking about. Geez, I could use any number of examples of why you don't want to walk around dripping urine because you're not wearing pants around the produce. Please. Do you want me to go there? I will. So yeah, there's implied consent. That's what the wearing of a seatbelt is. You want to travel on our highways? We have the right to pull you over if you don't wear a seatbelt. You want to be able to walk the sidewalk? You want to be able to breathe the air? I think that could be construed as the commons. Then you wear a mask, and it can be mandated. Don't give me this constitutional BS. We had a pandemic in 1918. We went through all of this before. Oh, yeah! It was 1917. It was the Spanish flu. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what was at the top, and it took up a lot of time, and I'm taking up a lot of time now, too, but it's okay. We're in a salon. On the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe, a DHS auditor did not employ any medical professionals when his office cleared U.S. border agents of wrongdoing in the deaths of 2 Guatemalan children. 23 attorneys general sued Betsy DeVos for blocking student loan forgiveness because she wants her cut. And Los Angeles is in an alarming and dangerous phase as virus cases surge. You think Florida's in a problem? Wait till you see L.A. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Russian authorities sparked outrage as it demanded prison sentences for 3 anti-Putin youth group members, and they're only in their teens. And they're looking at almost 10 years. And a fire is endangering exhibits at the Modern Art Museum Kampa in Prague. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Hey, did you know that Netroots Nation's coming up next week? And next week. And Kelly and Ricky will be part of that. It is virtual this year. And we've got our press releases. We'll be on Radio Row in the virtual domains of whatever domain. Well, we'll be in the virtual world of Netroots Nation. So, and we'll be having some interviews and whatnot occurring. And thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Ricky, for doing that. And we'll check in on that as we get even closer to Netroots Nation. If you would then take a look to the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice our Patreon link. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your pledge, your monthly pledge, it could even just be the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink. And if you could send those funds to us once a month, we will stretch those dollars, pay our bills, fly under the radar, and resist as the founders originally intended. And we've been doing this, stretching dollars, resisting, paying our bills, flying under the radar, fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended. Because of your generosity for almost 10 years now. Thank you. And to be honest, we need more of you. And thank you to those of you who have stuck by us through thick and thin. Truly, from the bottoms of our heart, thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and admirably, I might add. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam. You could follow me there on Twitter, and just do it, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on Twitter and other social media. Kelly has to do the Facebook linkage because Facebook has been routinely and serially pretty much suspending liberal voices right when the S hits the fan. They've been doing this serially since Thanksgiving. It's crazy. Anyway, check us out there. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay, let's dive into this first offering since we've just been burning up time in this salon. And we do have these offerings here. I suppose I should mention all of these are ready for you to take home, okay? You know, we don't necessarily have curbside service, but we give you a little bit of a flavor, and it's probably better to let it age a little bit. Open it up when you get home, and it'll be fresh and popping fresh for you. Indeed. So let's dive into this first offering out of the Associated Press by Noman Merchant. A government auditor did not employ medical professionals when his office cleared U.S. border agents of wrongdoing in the deaths of 2 Guatemalan children, the auditor said yesterday, Wednesday. Joseph Kufari, the DHS's Inspector General, testified before the House Homeland Security Committee regarding the deaths of 7-year-old Jacqueline Kell and 8-year-old Felipe Gomez Alonso. Both children died in December of 2018 after being apprehended by the U.S. Border Patrol. Jacqueline died of a bacterial infection that quickly led to sepsis and organ failure. Felipe contracted the flu, which led to a rapid, progressive infection. In both cases, the children were in Border Patrol custody, sick for hours, before they were taken to hospitals. Advocates have accused the Border Patrol of negligence and say the Trump administration has not done enough to protect immigrant families. The agency has defended the care given to migrants, including numerous rescues of people trying to cross the border, and said agents took both children to the hospital as quickly as they could. Yeah, they had to come back from their break. Then they had to have lunch. Then they had to go on another break. Jacqueline's father signed an English language form shortly after they were apprehended, saying she was in good health. But his native language is an indigenous language, and I am not able to pronounce it. Kwakichi. I brutalized that pronunciation. I apologize. Their deaths occurred when many Border Patrol facilities were packed with parents and children during a surge in border crossings. Border facilities are currently close to empty during the coronavirus pandemic because the U.S. government is expelling almost all people crossing the border, including at least 2,000 children. Kafari's office found no misconduct or malfeasance by DHS personnel in either death. Questioned by U.S. Representative Benny Thompson, a Mississippi Democrat who chairs the committee, he acknowledged that his office had not contracted any medical personnel for the reviews, but that it would do so in the future. We just wanted to get rid of this one first, okay? So you can forget about it because it's so tragic and it is so brutal, in this reporter's opinion. Jacqueline and Felipe are 2 of at least 6 migrant children known to have died after being apprehended by government agents since August 2018. And I'm going to put another emphasis on this, at least. A third child, 16-year-old Carlos Hernandez Vasquez, also died after contracting the flu and was found to have been lying unresponsive in a Border Patrol cell for hours before his death. Their death sparked national outrage and multiple investigations. U.S. Customs and Border Protection issued new directives on medical care and notifying Congress and the public about deaths. But months after they died, reports emerged of children locked in cells at a Border Patrol station in Clint, Texas, with inadequate food, water, and sanitation. Customs and Border Protection at the time said it was in crisis and needed funding. Congress then passed a $4.6 billion emergency funding to improve conditions at the border, and the GAO found last month that the CPB misspent some money intended for medical care on all things like all-terrain vehicles, boats, and a police dog program. Because when you're extending medical care, you want to make sure they're injured first, right? Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays is from the Associated Press by way of the American Independent. Secretary Betsy DeVos violated federal rules by justifying a policy to pretty much ignore student loan forgiveness without justification. So Democratic attorneys general in more than 20 states sued her, seeking to repeal her overhaul of a student loan forgiveness program. Congress voted to strike down her policy, which makes it more difficult to get federal student loans erased, but Trump saved it through a veto. Led by California and Massachusetts, a coalition of 22 states and the District of Columbia are challenging DeVos's policy in a federal lawsuit filed in San Francisco. They say DeVos violated federal rules by issuing her policy without justification, and they say her rules fail to create a meaningful process for defrauded students to get their federal loans forgiven. The suit says, the suit seeks to have DeVos's policy repealed and replaced by an earlier rule created under former President Barack Obama. Well, you know that's not going to happen because they pretty much want to dismantle everything the black guy did. They want to take down every monument to Obama and throw it in the river with chains around their necks. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra alleges that DeVos rewrote the rule to protect predatory for-profit colleges, adding that her update makes it nearly impossible for cheated students to get their federal loans forgiven. They rigged the system against students flat and simple, Becerra said in a call with reporters. The Education Department did not immediately comment on the suit, but they did have a statement about liberating the Oxford comma. Christopher Weber of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Coronavirus cases have surged to record levels in the Los Angeles area, putting the nation's largest county in an alarming and dangerous phase that, if not reversed, could overwhelm intensive care units and usher in more sweeping closures, health officials said yesterday, Wednesday. Well, the only thing to do now is to shut up those health officials, isn't it? Well, that's how they do it in Trump's America. They don't really do that in California. The situation is so uncertain, organizers of the 2021 Rose Parade in Pasadena canceled the New Year's Day tradition for the first time in 75 years out of concern that even 6 months from now, infections could spread among participants and the hundreds of thousands who line the route. The move came 2 days after California Governor Gavin Newsom shut bars and indoor dining statewide and ordered closures of hair salons, gyms, malls, and other indoor businesses in Los Angeles and other counties, experiencing the most significant surge of virus cases. In Los Angeles, Mayor Eric Garcetti warned authorities were on the verge of resorting to shutting down all but essential businesses. Statewide figures reported on Wednesday confirmed 11,126 additional cases of the virus on Tuesday and 140 deaths, the second highest one-day totals. Los Angeles County, home to a quarter of the state's population, reported 2,758 more confirmed cases and 44 deaths. The county's overall death total is under 4,000, well over half of California's total of about 7,200. Los Angeles County Public Health Director Barbara Ferrer said further restrictions are on the table if trend lines continue to show that hospitals could become overwhelmed. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. In 1947, the Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl set sail from Peru on a balsa wood raft called Kon-Tiki. As he explained a few years later in the documentary of the same name, Heyerdahl was convinced that indigenous people from South America had used a similar craft to settle Polynesia.
The only way to test my theory was to build one of these rafts, launch it in the sea off the coast of Peru, and find out if wind and current would in fact waft us ashore on some Pacific island.
101 days and 4,300 nautical miles later, his raft reached French Polynesia. The expedition didn't really prove anything other than that the feat was possible, and most scholars agreed then and now that the Pacific Islands were gradually settled from the other direction, by people traveling from East Asia. But a new study suggests that almost 900 years ago, Polynesians and native South Americans did make contact, and traces of that encounter live on in the genes of Polynesians today.
Whether the people were physically standing, on an island in Polynesia when they began, mingling, or whether they were on the coast of South America, we can't say.
Alex Ioannidis, a computational scientist and geneticist at Stanford University. His team compared the DNA of 800 individuals from 17 Pacific Islands and 15 Pacific Coast Native American groups, and they discovered within the genomes of modern-day Polynesians snippets of DNA typically found in Native Americans.
But what we found is that it is actually a very similar sequence of DNA that they all share, and that's not explained otherwise than having a common ancestor in recent times.
That ancestor likely came from the region of present-day Colombia or Ecuador, says co-author Andrés Moreno Estrada of Mexico's National Laboratory of Genomics for Biodiversity. And the similarity of that sequence across Polynesians suggests only a single contact occurred. Based on the lengths of those DNA segments in modern individuals, the scientists were able to pin a possible date on the meeting, around the year 1150. The study is in the journal Nature. It's important to note that while the finding does imply the two cultures met, it doesn't say anything about which culture initiated the contact, and it certainly doesn't support Heyerdahl's controversial theory that Polynesian culture derives from settlers from South America. However, Ioannidis points out that the discovery does align with some non-genetic observations. For example, the sweet potato, a South American crop, is found in Polynesia, but how it got there is less clear. This study could provide an explanation.
The other interesting thing about the sweet potato is the word used for it in some of the Polynesian languages is very close to the word used for it in some of the northwestern South American languages. And that's something that's been noticed before, and people pointed it out. And I think, it's very interesting given the results we found.
Moreno Estrada says the findings are valuable to anthropologists, but his primary interest was relaying the results back to the Polynesians who took part in the study.
They were really excited knowing about their own history and getting a picture of really what has been preserved in their DNA respect to their ancestors.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
The Trump administration, in a sudden reversal, has scrapped its plan for mass deportation and the barring of entry for international students. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The Trump administration's plan would have affected the approximately 1 million international students who are enrolled in American colleges and universities every year. The plan was to bar or deport those students if their college or university was conducting all classes online. The policy was announced on July 6th. In response, 20 state attorneys general, hundreds of colleges and universities across America, and technology companies, Google, Facebook, and Twitter, all opposed the policy. The policy would have forced some students to return to countries where they no longer have a home, forced others to return to regressive regimes, forced others to take classes at 4 a.m, forfeited all learning for the many students who lack strong internet access, and, for many students, made continuing their education far less likely when in-person classes resumed, even if they had the funds for transportation back and forth and back and forth. 8 lawsuits were filed, and on July 14th, 8 days after the policy was announced, and moments before the first court hearing was about to begin, the administration revoked its policy. So, opposition to this ill-conceived, destructive anti-immigrant policy has prevailed, at least in this instance, at least for now. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1862. That was the day that black rights activist Ida B. Wells Barnett was born in Holly Springs, Mississippi. She was the oldest of 8 children. Wells went to college and then became a teacher in Memphis, Tennessee. While in Memphis, Ida B. Wells became active in speaking out against black oppression in the Jim Crow South. She was the editor of a black newspaper, the Free Speech and Headlight. She wrote about many of the issues that faced the black community, including violence, unequal education facilities, and voter suppression. Taking such a public stand could have disastrous repercussions. She wrote under the pseudonym Iola, but she was fired from her job for writing about the inequities of the segregated Southern education system. Tom Moss, a successful black store owner and friend of Ida B. Wells, was lynched by a white mob. 2 other black men were also lynched for helping him to try and defend his store. Black Southern business owners were seen as potential economic competition and were often the targets of threats, violence, and lynching. Angered by the murders, Ida B. Wells began to research the lynchings. She published the findings of her investigation in her newspaper. Furious white residents destroyed and burned her newspaper office. In danger for her life, Wells left Memphis. Ida moved to Chicago, where she continued her anti-lynching work, documenting how the heinous act happened not only in the South. She helped to found the NAACP. At the first NAACP conference in Atlanta in 1909, Wells spoke, saying, quote, "Time was when lynching appeared to be sectional, but now it is national. A blight upon our nation, mocking our laws, and disgracing our Christianity." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's lots of more of us where we come from, where the temperature currently is at 62 degrees. They're telling us we're going to be cooler than yesterday. We're only going to be about 94 or 95. So, cooler, as they like to tell us. That means plentiful sunshine. The winds will be out of the north-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Oh my, a scouring wind. Hot, too. Clear skies overnight. Lows in the upper 50s, low 60s. Warm nights. Winds will continue out of the north-northwest at 10 to 15. And then mainly sunny tomorrow, and it's going to be even cooler. It's only going to be 90. Winds will decrease out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County of Southern Oregon are now at 196. I think that our hospitals will be sending the data to the CDC anyway, no matter what the Trump administration says about ignoring the CDC. Just send the numbers to them until they can figure out what the hell is going on. Grass pollen remains high right outside the window of the mothership here at Netroots Radio. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is good at 28 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains very high at 9. I know I'm a broken record, but take care. You don't want a melanoma ever. Please. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.99 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 73%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 71 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 70 and cloudy. Rome is 85 and partly cloudy. With a thunderstorm advisory that could impact electrical infrastructure. Kyiv is 80 degrees and fair. Kabul is 80 degrees and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 82 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 70 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 55 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 and cloudy, but with a fog advisory, as they usually have this time of year. And New York is a balmy 75 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Russian authorities demanded prison terms for 3 members of a youth group charged with creating an extremist organization in a case that elicited public outrage and has been seen as politically motivated, do you think? A prosecutor has asked a Moscow court to sentence 3 members of a group dubbed New Greatness to 6, 6.5, and 7.5 years in prison, and to hand 4 more members suspended sentences between 4 and 6.5 years. A mere slap on the wrist, eh? Members of the group were arrested in 2018 on charges of creating an extremist organization aiming to overthrow the government. You know, they kind of wanted to register people to vote to maybe vote out Putin. That's overthrowing the government, and that is so extremist. It gets even worse, though. Defense lawyers maintain that undercover police agents had written the group's radical program, effectively fabricating the case against young people with opposition views to Putin who were just meeting to discuss politics. The arrest of the 2 youngest members, 17-year-old Anna Pavlikova and 19-year-old Maria Dubovic, prompted a mass protest in August of 2018, after which the 2 teenagers were released under house arrest. The case has been widely criticized by human rights advocates as a glaring example of politically motivated abuse of Russia's anti-extremism laws, the same kind Trump is trying to institute here. I'm shocked.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Evermore anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A fire broke out at a modern art museum in the heart of the Czech capital. Electrical cables caught fire at one of Museum Kampa's buildings, sending acrid smoke across the nearby Vlatva River, Prague firefighter spokesman Martin Kafka said. Firefighters managed to extinguish the blaze, but had to evacuate pieces of art from an exhibition hall hit by the thick smoke. The hall likely suffered unspecified damage, but it was not immediately clear if any artwork was damaged. The museum, located near the iconic Charles Bridge, is known for its valuable collection of paintings by Franciszek Kupka, a pioneer of modern abstract painting. Police said more than 100 people had to be evacuated from the museum and nearby buildings, with one person needing medical treatment. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow, of course, for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life at least once a week. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.